What do you think about the idea that anyone who has made significant Bitcoin gains should be forced into labor? You heard it right. That's what the chairperson of the Green Youth is demanding here. This is an absolutely shocking story that's going on here right now. She says here that wealthy individuals just lounge around all day anyway and don't need the money, she says. So she labels wealthy individuals as people who are set for life, who have enough Bitcoin but also other assets. Shares, real estate, which simply has liquid assets of over 800,000. They're just labeled as unemployed. They're lazy bums who just lie around all day. Unemployed people. And it can't be that these people are just sitting around at home being lazy. And that's why they should be forced into labor. And this is a highly explosive topic for Bitcoin, because this debate is really starting to heat up. That there's really a debate about envy here, because many people have built up a large fortune with Bitcoin in the past. And I can guarantee you or not guarantee you, but it is very, very likely that more and more of you will feel this way in the future. People who have really huddled through 1, 2, or 3 cycles hardcore, who truly know what it means to go through bear markets and deal with all that volatility. When all your friends are piling on you and saying, hey, sell your Bitcoin, what's up with this whole scam, and so on. And then you've really made it standing on your own 2 feet, being self-sufficient. Here, building up a high fortune. And then you have people like the Green Party chairperson who is actually demanding this. You should just force those people into labor. And at the same time, the Greens are calling for the tax exemption on Bitcoin to be abolished. And stuff like that. You always have to distinguish between the Green Youth and the Green Party, that's clear. But you can really see what kind of currents there are in the country that are really alarming here. And this is truly a very important topic. We're going to take a look at the whole tweet in just a second, because there's a lot going on here. Community noted, because there are also some false statements being thrown around here. And there's really a massive culture of debate here. Right under this tweet, things are really heating up. Here, there are people attacking each other. And there are big debates about envy here. Some say we need to completely abolish Bitcoin, massively tax Bitcoin. All these people, or not just Bitcoin, I always talk about Bitcoin, but this is really about all the private investors. People who have stocks, people who have real estate. I'm focusing on Bitcoin here, but Bitcoin basically falls under the same category as private investors. Whether you've built up a big fortune with stocks, with real estate, or whatever. So, a private investor is someone who, let's say, has it made, who doesn't necessarily have to go to work anymore. But here, people are basically just being accused. Hey, anyone who has a lot of money or anyone who's made a lot of money here, he's just lazy now, but that's not true. I know so many people who have become wealthy through Bitcoin here, who have become wealthy and no longer have to work, but are allowed to work. And these people are now making an even bigger contribution to the world, to society, because they no longer have to be enslaved, no longer work for money, but suddenly you can do what you love. You can do what you love. And what happens when people do that? When you're no longer driven by money, but when you really have an intrinsic motivation, then something amazing happens because they provide a much greater value to society. When everyone does what they truly love with all their heart, where they really stand 100% behind it, then they can provide the greatest service to people, where they really stand 100% behind it. Then he can provide the greatest service to people. And when you're just, let's say, trapped in a fiat spiral, which is probably systematically intended as well, then it's really, really difficult here to provide the greatest possible value to society. But let's take a look at the hottest topic. Tweet here from the chairperson of the Green Party Youth. If you're currently in the car, then it's best to pull over to the right. Then take a seat for a moment. Take a moment, just a second, because what I'm about to read to you could really shock you. It says here from people BITART, instead of talking about forced labor, for those receiving citizens' income, how about mandatory community service for the largest group of unemployed, the 800,000 wealthy individuals in Germany? They're just lounging around all day anyway and don't really need the money. So this is really no joke. She means it here. Seriously. Every whale, every person who has actually created wealth with Bitcoin here is a lazy bum. What are you thinking? This is an attack that you rarely see in this form. That you really say, hey, you've saved something. And now let's take away the savings. That means you pay taxes on it first. That means you go to work, pay taxes on everything. Then you've built up a fortune here. You also have to practice consumer restraint. So it's not like you just get money out of thin air, you get money taken away. Or it just rains on your money or something like that. Instead, You've practiced consumer restraint. On top of that, you're also taking on a certain risk. One thing that's just never mentioned here in the debate. And on top of that, you need to have a lot of patience. That means you really need to have patience, like in the marshmallow effect or marshmallow test, where two kids get a marshmallow. One kid takes the marshmallow right away. The other one waits to take the marshmallow until later, but then they get a bigger reward. That means you also need a shorter time reference, a longer time horizon. That means you need a lot of skills here, and you also need a certain mindset. And in the end, it's really, really unfair that you have these people who have worked hard over the years to build something up, who have saved up, so it's not just like, hey, we just want to tax you. We want to tax you twice. Because wealth is also taxed again with capital gains tax, or now. For example, when the Bitcoin tax is supposed to come. That's how it is here. How the Greens are planning. The tax exemption after 1 year is getting scrapped. And then all these people are just supposed to be forced into labor. They should be cleaning the streets. Or whatever, because they're just lounging around at home. But that's not the case. I know a lot of people, for example, who call themselves private individuals, but they're working on nonprofit projects. For example, I have someone here in El Salvador who is a private individual and doesn't have to work anymore. He started so many startups in his life and has basically set himself up for life. So he says he's just not working for money anymore. But now he wants to do something here in El Salvador. To start a school, a Bitcoin school, that's accessible to international people here. And he says he has no financial interest. He even wants to bootstrap it himself with his own money. That means he's using his own resources to fund nonprofit projects here. And now here comes some green chairperson and says, hey, we need to force them into labor. I mean, that's out of touch. You couldn't be more out of touch. She probably hasn't worked a single day in her life. Okay, I don't know that right now. I don't know the background, I take that back. But it's really, really crazy what's going on here. But now take a look here. This whole thing is going to be noted by the community. Here it says the mentioned number is 800,000. Includes over 200,000 people aged 65 and older. These are obviously not unemployed people, but retirees. The source Statista explicitly defines this as the older part. So she basically overstepped here. She even put out some fake news here. So we generally need to take away 200,000 people here. Deduct people because when people are retired, can't you just say, hey, you lazy bums, we need to force you to work now, just because you've made so much money. That means you've worked your whole life too, just because you've made so much money now. That means you've worked your whole life here too. Then you can eventually reap the harvest here. So that's really twisted. The BitcoinL ambassador has also commented below and has identified the difference between citizens' income recipients and private individuals here, because a lot is being mixed up here. So people receiving citizens' income haven't contributed anything. They haven't created any added value. They receive money from those who no longer have it. Work. That's the definition here. And the definition of a wealthy individual is that the person or their ancestors have stored their labor in assets. And from those, if they feel like it, they can also benefit. And that's the crazy part, that if someone here, for example, works, if someone contributes, then you just say, no, that's not tolerated. From which you can also benefit if you feel like it. And that's the crazy part, that when someone here, for example, works, when someone contributes, you just say, no, that's not tolerated. That's not accepted in our society here. I'll say it's recognized, or it's obviously a story of envy. You say, okay, he has more than I do, and I can't stand it. Ultimately, this is a very, very bad mindset. And it really casts a very, very negative light on the Green Party when you have demands like this. I mean, that's the Green chairperson, if I understood that correctly. This isn't just some completely irrelevant person. It's someone who actually has a certain influence here, even if she might not be an official politician or anything in the Bundestag. At least she's definitely at the forefront of the Green youth here. And you can be pretty sure of that if she has this view, then there are definitely others. Other people in this party have similar views. And what do we need to explain again? There are different ways to basically become wealthy individuals here. That means you can, for example, be employed. For years, they've been saving something on the side. That means you definitely bring added value here. A great achievement. Or you can also be entrepreneurial, for example. You can start any kind of company. A startup can scale up. You can also be self-employed. Or you can also make investments and build up a fortune through those investments. So you actually have 4 ways to become wealthy. Some people achieve it earlier, some later, and some might never achieve it. And some might also achieve it through an inheritance. But then someone in the family has it before. Here, it can either be through entrepreneurship or as a worker, meaning through employment or through investments or through self-employment. Here, something has been accomplished. And this achievement is just supposed to be ignored now. It should just be said, hey, no, we as a society are not accepting that anymore. You have to work here under duress, and on top of that, we want to tax you. Diego Fastnacht actually made a really interesting comment about that. The comments below the tweet, I'll link it for you down below, because things really got heated there. It's crazy how many comments were flying around. It says here, you choose to forego consumption and focus on building wealth, and from that, you generate returns. Then this shows that it's not income without effort, but rather the reward for foregoing consumption. So here it would basically be an income without effort. Basically, accused the people of being wealthy individuals. Such behavior is incredibly beneficial for the economy. This money enables private actors to make investments, which in turn lead to economic growth, jobs, and prosperity. That's why there's compensation for providing capital. And that's also what I meant earlier, that there are people out there, like my buddy here in El Salvador, who is setting up school projects again. With your own money, you can bootstrap the same way or really push your entrepreneurial visions forward. And that's another benefit for society. Then he goes on to say, Diego Fastnacht, I don't expect the chairperson of the Green Youth to understand anything about the economy. But at least the physical integrity of people who don't spend all their income could be. So he basically means that you're interfering with people's property. And then basically the people are no longer physically intact. Look here, very, very bullish in the background. Bull market is coming. That's actually all of them. Wealthy individuals here, all the cows. They're just people who aren't contributing anything, just hanging out. They should also be forced into labor. That's obviously a little joke. But just here are a few small impressions from El Salvador, directly from the herd of cows or the herd of bulls. Always get criticism for confusing bulls and cows, but to me they are all bulls. He adds, by the way, even if the money was inherited. Someone has made the sacrifice of abstaining from consumption for you, and there's no justification for imposing forced labor because of that. The spirit of unfreedom is spreading further and further in Germany. Protecting one's own financial and human capital assets is becoming increasingly important, and this is now the point where Bitcoin becomes very, very explosive. You really have to protect yourself from such attacks. Of course, it's not like it's going to happen tomorrow or anything. It's decided. You can relax. The Greens probably won't have much to say anyway if things keep going like this. So on one hand, I'd say it's shocking. On the other hand, you could say that maybe we're going through a bit of a change right now. And maybe all these socialist experiments are really starting to fade out now. Or at least, people aren't going to be fooled anymore. And then there are these kinds of proposals, and that definitely needs to be criticized. That's why we have this video here. But you can just sit back here. Because you have Bitcoin here, you really need to protect yourself. And in case of emergency, I've already mentioned this quite a bit, often heard, and I made the video about the massive Bitcoin tax that the Greens wanted to introduce. And I asked down below, hey folks, what if in the worst case scenario, a Bitcoin tax comes? Would they emigrate or would they not emigrate? I just say that most people would actually be ready to emigrate here. When it comes to Bitcoin taxation, if you've built up wealth here over the years, taken massive gains, and dealt with the whole fat campaign from the media, you'd be heavily attacked, you'd be massively targeted. And they've managed to push through here. That's a huge, huge achievement. And you have to say, if you just push through here, it's not like the gains just come crashing down out of nowhere, from the sky. Bitcoin buyers from 2010 to 2013, they were under massive pressure. They had to do their own homework. They had to learn, they had to watch podcasts, they had to subscribe to the YouTube channel here. So if you're new here, hit the subscribe button down below, not the bell, so we can really gain some traction here. Because it's important to understand this now, that this is hodling. Isn't just some free income, it really means proof of work. You have to engage with Bitcoin, with the monetary system, and it's really not a problem at all. And there's no shame in showcasing your wealth here, living it up, living your freedom. That's what Bitcoin is for, to make our lives better, to make our lives freer. And there are some players in this world who don't want to see this, who don't want to see a free world, who don't want to see wealthy people, but rather want to redistribute things here. With nasty stuff, networks, that's why Bitcoin is so important. If you want to buy Bitcoin, I'll put a link for you down below too. 21 Bitcoin, the easiest way to buy Bitcoin here in Europe. Here, with the code Bitcoin, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. Please let me know what you think about these massive accusations here. See you later. Peace out.